Very happy to be joined by Cameron Hurt, who is an organizer with the Coalition to Free Ruchell Magee, as well as a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, just at the outset, Cameron, tell us who Ruchell Magee is and why he's being held.
Well, that's an excellent question, Eugene. Ruchell Magee, as you said, is the longest held political prisoner here in the United States, a country which doesn't even acknowledge that it has political prisoners. So we think even stating that is a huge statement. He was actually born March 17th, 1939, Louisiana. So very long time ago, he grew up in the Jim Crow South. He was actually locked up in a situation that very much echoes the Emmett Till situation. He already spent 7 years in prison, starting at the age of 16. He moves to Los Angeles in 1962 when he's finally released from Angola, which is, a well-known former plantation turned prison. And what we want to say about this is that arrested on a $10 marijuana conviction. That is what actually lands him in prison for the first time, is that it was a drug deal gone wrong. The other person accuses him of kidnapping, and he ends up with basically a 1 year to life sentence. Like, he is basically railroaded. He's beaten by the police when he's arrested. And the point that we can make right here, starting in 1962, 63, is he spends essentially the vast majority of his life behind prison doors. Whether it's in Louisiana and then in Los Angeles, he's arrested. So what he's most known for is actually his participation in the August 7, 1970 rebellion, in which Jonathan Jackson, a well-known freedom fighter, actually led several prisoners in escaping temporarily. So on that date, Ruchell Magee and William Christmas were on the witness stand for the trial of James McClain, who was also being questioned for assaulting a guard, supposedly, after another prisoner was murdered. So Jonathan Jackson attempts to free his brother and the rest of the Soledad brothers by taking control of that Marin County courthouse. Ruchell was not an initiator of that. He was not a person who was knowledgeable about what was going to happen. But once it started, it's not like you have many choices. And what he decided to do was to get his case out to the media. He thought that I'm being treated as a slave inside. The only thing that I can do is take a move for my own freedom and liberation. Unfortunately, as many know, the San Quentin prison guards arrive and then they open fire on the group as they're leaving the building. They killed Jonathan Jackson, William Christmas, James McClain, as well as Judge Harold Haley. So that may seem shocking that prison guards shot their own judge. Ruchell is the sole survivor out of the people who broke out. Wow. And he has essentially been treated in that pariah way that, we're going to make an example out of this brother because he would dare challenge the sanctity, the holiness of the U.S. state. That's a great starting point. And it's unfortunate that, people were pushed to that, but yeah.
No, I hear you 100%. And I think, and of course, Ruchell Magee is also taking on the moniker of Sin Q after, of course, the leader of the Amistad Rebellion. And I think that just hearing you tell that story, Cameron, it was just reminded me of, almost like a slave narrative in a way, an escaped slave narrative. He was in a situation where he was offered freedom for, being trapped in this unjust system. And here he is as a political prisoner. So, obviously it has been quite some time that he has been incarcerated here on these charges since 1970. So what is the status of where he is right now? And I know there's obviously a campaign to free him, but what is the general context?
All right. Yeah. The comparison and what you said about slavery is very apt. It's very accurate. In his own words, and this is a person who has done so much to learn about the history of African liberation, of Black liberation in the United States. His words were slavery 400 years ago, slavery today. It's the same, but with a new name. So he went on to say that, he wants to prove to the public that he has been railroaded, that he has been treated poorly, to say the least. The status of him right now, he's currently 82 years old. We have evidence that, deems that he may be using a walker now. His health, of course, was at tremendous risk, just like all prisoners and political prisoners during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that continues to be a threat. And he currently has two motions in the legal system, which are a request to the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, to commute his sentence, and a hearing that he's trying to push in the Supreme Court. Ruchell actually has been denied parole 13 times. Actually, this December is going to mark 40 years since his first parole suitability hearing way back in 1981. So let's just put this together, 58 years of incarceration. And the parole board is still saying, you do not have the right to leave this place. You are not ready to return back to society. But the thing I want to make super clear right here is that he was not convicted of murder in this. He was not found guilty of murder. And so much evidence points to the fact that the San Quentin guards actually murdered the judge. So essentially, he is just being punished for the bravery and the choices of Jonathan Jackson, of the other freedom fighters, not because he actually committed some egregious crime. He's actually been held much longer than the average sentence for murder, which is about 40 years.
I think that's such an important point as well, because it really gets to the idea of, political prisoners as a concept. And the idea, and as you mentioned at the outset, Cameron, this is the United States is a country that doesn't even recognize it as political prisoners. And such a huge part of that is to treat political acts, liberatory acts, as criminal behavior and essentially lump them together. We see it all the time with uprisings presented as riots and so on and so forth. But this seems very much to speak to this long tradition in the United States of criminalizing dissent.
Absolutely. It's definitely a way of criminalizing dissent. I mean, we're looking back at him being first imprisoned for a substance that is now legal in California, marijuana. Then essentially the frustration of spending 7 years in a prison for something as small as that, a sentence that really was undeserved. So I didn't even mention that, before he really started to go out and make stronger political statements. He was also bound and gagged in trial. His own court-appointed attorney, like many Black defendants, actually betrayed him in a sense and pushed him to take a deal that actually didn't work because of that connection. So then once he makes such a political stance as aligning with someone like Jonathan Jackson, and, the fact that it's well known that he was incredibly politically active, means that he's an incredible threat. I mean, to the eyes of the state at that point. But the fact of the matter is that he has not been a threat. And at 82 years old, there's no reason that he should still be in there. We believe that he should be out with his family, with his loved ones. And that's why in 2019, we created the Coalition to Free Ruchell Magee, which can be found at www.freeruchellmagee.org. There's so much information up there, so much that can be learned, but also a lot of information about the different people who have endorsed the campaign, which I would love to go into too if we have time.
You do have time. I'd certainly be interested to hear that. Who has endorsed this campaign?
So just to speak of a few individuals who we would like to mention, there's a long list, so forgive me that not everyone will be mentioned, but the chairman, Fred Hampton Jr., Jalil Muntaqim, we have Harold Taylor of the San Francisco 8, as well as Hank Jones from the San Francisco 8. And we have 3 members of the San Quentin 6, Luis Talamantes, Willie Tate, and David Johnson. We also have, people like Gerald Horn from Freedom Now Radio, who I know Breakthrough News has definitely had many times. Brian Becker of the Answer Coalition, Gloria LaRiva, presidential candidate, Robin D.G. Kelly, professor of American history at UCLA. And the list really goes on. There's so many people who have said, this is absolutely ridiculous. We have to do something. And then with organizations, some of the organizations that have really helped propel this campaign forward have been Black August Los Angeles, the Answer Coalition, Fair Chance Project, the National Alumni Association for the Black Panther Party, Black Lives Matter Global Network, National Jericho Movement, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and so many more.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always looking to build this list. Media, we were on Jared Ball's show, and many others. So we would love to continue expanding that.
Well, and before we let you go, Cameron, where can people find the Coalition to Free Ruchell Magee?
All right. So you can go to www.freeruchellmagee.org. That is the main hub of our website. And once you get to that website, there's so much that you can do from there. You can immediately sign our petition via Action Network that says, immediate commutation for Ruchell's sentence. You can write to the governor's office in a matter of seconds. We're collecting as many letters as possible, trying to really make it evident that the community, the wider world of progressive and people who care about justice really support Ruchell, that he's not someone to be demonized, but he's somebody who deserves our full love and support. And I really hope that folks will check out that website, www.freeruchellmagee.org.
Right on. Well, Cameron, I really appreciate you joining us and helping us learn more about Ruchell Magee and certainly how we can free him. And thanks for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Of course.